Today, I am delighted to welcome to the show Deborah Heiser, PhD. She is an applied developmental psychologist. There's a lot of words there I can't say. A TEDx speaker, consultant, author, and founder of the Mentor Project, and an adjunct professor in the psychology department at sunny Old Westbury. Is it SUNY Old Westbury? I don't know whether that's the first time I've seen that phrase before. Deborah additionally has authored peer review articles, is co-editor of Spiritual Assessment and Intervention with other older adults, and a frequent expert guest for syndicated and local talk radio shows, international and local podcasts, and print and outlet media, including New York Times, Seattle Times, Dallas Times, and contributes to Thrive Global. Her research covers a wide range of topics related to aging, including depression identification, dementia and frailty, with grants awarded from NIA and NIH and Pfizer. She received an international award for her research on depression identification, as well as serving for 9 years on the board of the State Society on Aging of New York, and was president, and I can't remember that name, and was president there. In 2008, and later in 2016, she served as the president of the Queen's Psychological Association in New York. I need new teeth after all that, Deborah. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, it sounds like I didn't prepare for that. I had read that beforehand, but I still stumbled over it and can't say afterwards. So there we go. Tell the audience a little bit more about you.
Sure. As you mentioned, I'm an applied developmental psychologist. What I do is I look at what we can expect from life as opposed to looking at the pathology of life. So most psychologists are looking at all the things that can go wrong, and I'm looking at all the things that can go right. So I specialize in aging, so midlife and older. And I also really focus heavily on mentorship. So I'm really excited to be able to talk about these things because most people think that we have a sort of a downward spiral with age, and they couldn't be more wrong. So I'm excited to be able to tell how and why. We have a lot to look forward to.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. So, as I mentioned to you before, it sort of piqued my interest when I saw you on the podcast service thing there around the fact that your focus is around aging and that change. And I'm now 55 now, knocking on 56, or as my daughter said, I'll be 57. You'll be 57 next year now. And I kind of noticed changes physiologically and psychologically over the last 4 or 5 years in my personal life. And that obviously changes my perspective on my career, changes my perspective on dealing with people who are different ages within that spectrum of delivering it. And one of the things that I find really interesting is and I've had a lot of education from my daughters at 13 and at 18, thinking about how people think differently and how actually societal changes in the last 5 to 10 years have been immense from my experience in the workplace and outside the workplace. And I think I'm middle-aged. I don't know where middle age is classed as. So I'm assuming I'm middle-aged, not old age yet. That's where that sort of piqued my interest. Is I've got a community out there of project managers, and there are a lot of grey-haired project managers out there, and going through changes in career, a lot of new people coming into the organisation, changes in our adaptation, looking towards retirement, health and things like that. But that's hence the reason I thought it'd be really good to have a chat on there. So the long intro question there really was, do you want to just give us a talk about one of the things of saying, well, what is middle age, say, and what is that? Where does it kind of kick in with your research and with the things that you deal with, how you help people?
So middle age starts at really 40, and that's pretty young. If you are my age and you're 56, I'll be 57 soon. That feels like a long time ago, but really we start our midlife journey at 40. And it's flexible in the way that people talk about it, 60 to 65 or so. And then, but really we're starting middle age when we're still working, when a lot of people are either starting families or are maybe ending, their kids are going off already. It's an interesting age because people are at different stages in their lives with where they are in their career and in their family life. So that's why people are questioning, well, where is midlife really? But when we look at our development, as a developmental psychologist, I really do look at our physical and emotional journey over the lifespan, and we do all follow it along the same points. We just may be at different points. So just like when you have a baby and it might start to walk at 6 months, or it might be 16 months, it's still normal. So our emotional trajectory, which is what I focus a lot on, starts at 40. And that's really where most of us, regardless of where we are in our work and with our family, are at a point where we know who we are for the most part. We've gone through our identity phase. We kind of know where we're going. We know who our friends are at this point. You know, we're not like when we were 20, when we were looking to find our people and we had a whole lot of superficial friendships. By the time we're 40, we've sloughed off the meaningless, sort of super fun friends, and we don't have a lot of time for them. And we really focus on smaller groups of more meaningful connections. And that could be family and just a little bubble outside of that even. It's not looking at quantity, it's looking at quality. So some of these things it doesn't matter if you have young kids at 40 or your kids are grown, you're probably still in that area where you're saying, I'm looking at myself where I know what I'm good at, who I am, and who my people are. And when we embark on that in midlife, that's the point where we start to say, how do I matter in the world? And that's when we say, okay, I've checked a lot of boxes. And so that can mean schooling for some, it can mean jobs, it can be getting a house, whatever your boxes are that you've been checking that matter to you. By the time you hit midlife, you say, okay, are there more boxes? Is my life just a bunch of boxes to check? And we start to want to make sure that we are relevant in the world, that we have a purpose that matters, that we ourselves have a footprint that we're leaving that matters. And that's the first time we start to question it. Now, by 50, we're really starting to say, okay, this is when it really kicks in into sort of high gear where we start to think about all of this. We may be getting inklings at 40, but 50 is when this is really something that sort of hits. And I like to think of it like Ebenezer Scrooge and Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. He was the guy who was checking all his boxes. He was a self-made guy. He lived in a mansion. He had servants taking care of all of his needs, but he was miserable. And then generativity kicked in. That's the midlife magic point. He was a little older than that. He was somebody who took him a little longer. But as soon as he started giving back to others, he started to feel joy. And that's just how it works in real life. So it doesn't really matter about the age. It's probably going to happen in midlife. It could happen for some later. But the generativity stage is the first one that really is the emotional trajectory that goes way up high for us. That's where when we start to kick into the stage where we are engaged in either philanthropy, in volunteering, or mentoring. Those are the three forms of generativity where we care for someone without expecting something in return. Once that kicks in, we really start to feel like we have purpose, like we have meaning, like there's a sense of immortality, like I'm giving a little bit of myself to someone else and living on in them. And so that's the first point that we can really see our trajectory continuing to go up, where we feel fulfilled, we feel like we matter, where we feel like our it's kind of like the movie It's a Wonderful Life, where we feel like the world is better having us in it. And so that's the point that I really like to talk to people about, because it's the point when we start to feel unsure of ourselves, like, what am I doing? When you're starting to feel that, say, oh, good, I'm hitting the generativity stage.
Yeah, it's really interesting that, because it is. I can hear that. Though I started, it's slightly different, and maybe that's it. But maybe the things that I started, I kind of look at the midlife crisis question that people And sometimes I look at that and go, well, actually, when I was younger, there were certain things I enjoyed doing. And it feels like that with a lot of people where what happens is they go, okay, I like doing that. And you get to the point where you're in your 40s and you're into 50, thinking, well, actually, I enjoyed that, but I stopped doing it because of this, because of this, because of this, because of this. And when that happens, then you start going back, well, I'm going to carry on. Someone says they go and buy the motorcycle, they buy the fast car, but they always wanted one when they were a kid. They never got around to it. They got family, they got commitments. And that's when they start getting that freedom to try and do it. And it kind of, I don't know if that kind of correlates with that sort of time as well. But things like, I've certainly felt with that, certainly, and you said, I thought it before you said it before about leaving that impression, that footprint, lovely description of it, of something that comes after you've gone. You've got your family, you've got your kids, and that's there. And it's like they say about that a pebble in the water, isn't it? Is when the ripples have stopped, is when that person really passes on. And you do I start thinking about that now, about my mortality and things like that. And that got me thinking, what am I going to do? What did I enjoy? And I decided to do a little book. I wanted to be part of that. I wanted that. I think that's part of what it was in there. Getting back into music and things like that. And again, those sort of things that can stay, and then doing this podcast. This kind of, for as long as it's digital out there, it's going to be floating around in different places, and and also it helps people out there as well. I've never thought about that volunteering sort of side of it, but I've done a few things where I've just volunteered supporting runs. So being a marshal at a run or a local park run, and found I got immense amount, when the first time I did that, I was so surprised at how much I got out of it. I was just like, I was stood in the cold, pointing people up a hill on a bicycle. Now, there's a little bit of sadistic joy of knowing there was a really big hill up there. But I enjoyed helping those people on that day. And I was really surprised at that, because I've never been someone who's been quite that. It's philanthropic, I suppose. I've been a little bit mercenary over my life. It's been my general default. Is again a long question. Is that something you're seeing, that you have people experiencing that, going back to the things they enjoyed and revisiting those?
Yeah, because who has time when you're in your 30s and up to 40? You are hoofing it. You are really in your hustle phase. You've got a lot of balls in the air. You're trying to really get yourself settled in jobs, earning money, making sure that you're secure. You might be starting to make sure that a family is secure. That's when you might be trying to buy a house or make sure that you're in the place that you want to be. You don't have time at that point. That's when you start to sort of slough off some of the superficial friends and you're getting more of your meaningful connections. But that's because you just don't have the time to do those other things that you enjoyed. Once you become an expert in your area and you have a little bit of time, that's when people will go back to what they were doing. Or they'll say, you know what? I have something to say. I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to do something where I put myself out there. Now, podcasts are a form of modern mentorship. You are getting your word out there to others who can meaningfully connect with it and utilize that expertise. Like, we do know that those are the ways that people will connect. But I see people that'll say, I've always done art, but I didn't have time for 20 years. And then they pick it back up. Music, other things. It's a time that most people don't realize that midlife and older is the time where we have more self-exploration than we've ever had before, in terms of we now know who we are for the most part, and now we get to explore the things that we really enjoy about ourselves, or that we think that we're good at. You know, when we're younger, we have to try a lot of things that we're bad at. We have to, because we're figuring out what we're good at. And part of that is stumbling along the way over things that we're figuring out, is this for me or is this not for me? And it's normal to have a lot of failures along the way, or to find things that you even say, I'm good at it, but I don't like it. and to sort of navigate to where you like things. Now, once you've hit midlife, you already know what you like. And you're like, I'm only going to those things that I like and choosing those over and over again. So it could be in a new form, like podcasting didn't exist when I was in my 20s. But you could say, you know what, I really enjoy connecting with others or sharing my expertise with others. This is a great format for that. Blogging is a new format for that a lot of people didn't have before. You can be somebody who writes, but you say, I don't want to write a book. I want to write a little bit here and there. These are new platforms that are exploding with midlifers.
That makes sense. From a point of view with your experiences, obviously going through that, sometimes we can feel a little bit lost. With your research and the people you've dealt with, how do you, assume you're helping people on that, how do you help people kind of come to terms with what we go through at this age?
So, a lot of people will say a different term for transition. Transition is not a time, that is a time where there are new things. And you can either code that as an opportunity or a challenge. And it depends on how you're going to look at that. And we have a lot of these in our life, but there are times that bring us a little bit of stress or anxiety. So, there are good things. You can get into a college or a university and say, oh my gosh, that's new. I'm scared. Most freshmen are scared. You can get married. How many times have you heard of the bridezilla who goes a little, haywire with the plans? There was a whole show about bridezillas. That's supposed to be the most exciting time, but people get stressed. Any transition we have, when you have a new baby, you can be stressed. All of these things, a new job. How many times have you started a new job and you're like, oh my gosh, you have to take a nap when you come home in the beginning because it's so much emotional stress. Well, even good or bad, anything in our life that's a transition can be looked at that way and as a challenge or an opportunity. I try to help people to see transitions as an opportunity. So if you're in midlife and you're saying, I have all of these things that I'm unsure about, those are things that are opportunities. Wow, look at all the things that are in front of me that I can do, as opposed to, oh, I'm afraid and it feels like something that's a hurdle, as opposed to a door that's opening. So if we can look at it that way, it's really not a midlife crisis. It's more like a midlife set of opportunities that are ahead of us. You took an opportunity to do a podcast. I wrote a book. These I think are wonderful opportunities. If I try it and it doesn't work out, who cares? Really.
Yeah, I suppose that's interesting because I've learned that trying to mess things up and get them wrong and not be perfect is that's my default. I'm not too worried about getting it wrong or making a mistake. It's an example, I suppose, with last year was earlier in the year. Yeah, last year. Sorry, I got mixed up. We changed years again. Playing with a band, and I was singing, and I got it wrong. Forgot some of the lyrics, and off I went. But that was how it goes. Do you know what I mean? It was kind of, I made a mistake. It didn't really matter that much. So it's fine.
No, that's
It's
so
fine.
true. I tell students all the time, I say, go try something. And especially try it with me. I said, am I going to come and beat you? No, you have no worry. I will not do that. What could be the biggest issue if you make a mistake? You either try it again or you say, I'm never going to do it. So when you said you messed up the lyrics, did anyone chase you down the street and say, how dare you? No, it's really, we follow the rules that we had in school, which is that you need to get it right. There's a right and a wrong, but really life is a bunch of gray area. And so if you see a door that you were presented with, walk through it. What's the worst case scenario? There's really not much that's going to happen other than you're going to find out you like it or you don't.
One of the things that I noticed, you are founder and CEO of the Mentor Project. Now, do you want to just tell us a little bit about that? and about what's that all about, and why did you start it, really, I suppose?
So the Mentor Project is an organization that was founded by me and about 6 other people. And it came about because I was interested in mentorship when I was researching everything no one ever wants to have or get, like depression, frailty, Alzheimer's, and all of that at the beginning of my career.
Yeah.
I pivoted to, looking at generativity, the things that we want to look forward to. And I decided to focus on mentorship. So I was interviewing people all over, from grandmas to generals in the military, to find out what they thought about mentorship. And a strange thing happened. I started to find out that people who were really high level had a problem connecting with mentees. And I thought, how can that possibly be? At first I thought, well, maybe they're weirdos. They are people that don't connect well with people, but that wasn't it. So Bill Cheswick was one of the fathers of the firewall. And he said, I am getting ready to retire from Bell Labs, and I'm going to live on a farm. I'm going to have no access to any student anywhere to be able to mentor. And I said, wow, okay. So about a year or so later, somebody came to me and said, oh, I think I can get, people into schools to mentor. And I thought, wow, that's great. So we started just trying to get Bill into schools, and we were doing that and having a great time. We thought this would be it. Nothing more would happen. But then we moved from 10 people to 60 within 6 months, then to 80, then to 100. So by the end of the year, we had 100 new mentors, and they were all people who had the same problem. They were individuals who were the top 1% in their field and didn't have access to mentees. And it started to make sense. Like, you can't walk into a park and say, hey, kid, you want a mentor? It's not going to end well. And so these guys all said, hey, I need a place to do this. So we formed the Mentor Project, and we really pivoted pretty heavily during COVID when we had the big takeoff to expand outside of the US, because now everybody was on Zoom. So we really exploded. And just in 2024, we were able to give away more than $3 million in mentorship hours to students in 5 countries. And
Wow.
that was really impressive, because everyone does this for free. No one gets paid to do anything. They're all giving their time. And we were told so often, nobody who's in the top 1% will want to give away anything they have for free. They're going to be too busy, and you're barking up the wrong tree with mentorship. And they couldn't have been more wrong, because we have a waiting list of people who are looking to join, and we rose so quickly in how we were doing it. And people say, I want to mentor more and more. Like, they don't say, cut my hours. And so it really showed that generativity is real. People have a desire to give back, but they don't know where to go or how to do it. And so the Mentor Project is one of those places that really organically was able to show that the research and the theories that exist are true, and that mentoring is something that we're built to do. And here we are, and it's 2025, and I'm hoping that we'll reach well beyond 3 million in donated mentoring hours this year.
It's fantastic. It's interesting, because I've found that when I've been within my career in the job, some of the most enjoyable things that I've found is when I've seen someone who I've been coaching, mentoring, or have worked directly for me, and I've given some of that coaching, and when I see them succeed, and when I see them move, and in many cases move above and beyond me within the organisation. And I do find a lot of pleasure from that. And just looking at that person thinking, maybe I'm I had something to do with helping them get to where it was. Now, whether that's they don't want to be like me, or whether they've followed some of my advice, whichever way I had an influence in it. And it's one of those things where you don't get that direct value straight away all the time, But when you see that person transforming and see them developing, seeing their confidence build, that's where you get that. It's like when you see, like I say, my kids getting better and better at stuff, and where I support them in what they're doing. It's expected when you're being it as a parent. When you're supporting someone who you are just by accident co-located with them in an organisation, that's different. And then I think with this sort of thing, it again, it's how do you help more people become better versions of them is a really valuable thing. So looking at that mentor program, how does that work? Is that from your mentees? Well, are they from all walks of life, or are they certain age groups, or how does that work?
We go from kindergarten, which is about 5 years old, all the way through graduate school. So you could be 36, 56, however old you want to be in graduate school. You just have to be taking classes. You have to be a student. And
Right, yeah.
so
Okay, cool.
the mentee signs up. We have a button on our website, and it's become a mentee, and you can sign up. Now, if you're a minor, you need a parent or guardian to co-sign with you. And then you can meet up with a mentor one-on-one of your choice. We usually try to get people connected with a lot of different mentors, because the person you least expect is often the best mentor. And it's because they can see you from a different perspective than somebody in your own field. So we've found some really cool and unique mentoring pairings that way. And I believe that you should have as many mentors in your life as you possibly can. You know, we should all be looking to have as many people on our side helping us as possible. And so when we pair people, they can see person one-on-one once, or they can see them for years. And so it just depends. So some of our students have patented with us, some have started companies, some have, learned a new skill that they never would have, learned otherwise. Some are seeking advice for their, careers that they want to go into. So it really varies, mentee by mentee. We also do a lot of group things. So we may speak to an entire school. We sent one mentor to Tanzania. He's from LA, not LA, from California, around the San Francisco area, to a small town in Tanzania to teach an entire community cartooning. So he was able to shape an entire community of more than 500 individuals over the course of the 2 weeks. And then he went back the following year. Right now, he happens to be in Brooklyn. And so some of our mentors, we send them around, or we do Zoom. We have TMP Kenya, where a bunch of college students get on, and we do monthly meetings with the students with a panel of about 5 mentors, and they can say, ooh, I want to follow up with one of those mentors, and they can do that. So we try to make it as easy for the mentors as possible. We're a mentor-focused organization, so it isn't the mentee saying, I want something from somebody, and we have to try to make that fit. It's the mentors who say, I have this that I want to give, and we look for who wants to take that. And that way we can I feel like my goal as the bus driver of this organization is to make sure that the mentors are leaving the legacy that they want, and to the person that they want to, and in the places that they want to. And so, that's really the goal. And it always works out, because we know the mentees are going to really get something from it. But the cool thing is to get to see the mentors say, wow, I have relevance, I have purpose, I'm useful, I matter, and I'm needed. And so it's a really great sort of full circle.
Yeah, it's interesting, because that kind of joins up, like you say, with the you're saying about the fact that you've got your book, that you've done the mentorship edge, kind of feeding with that. So it just realised that something you said before, and I can't see, it's not behind me. My book, it's on this shoulder, if it's on the video or not, I don't know, I can't see. One of the reasons I wrote that one was there was a number of, it's got 10, 11 hacks in there of what I've used over my career to try and be a bit more productive. And part of the genesis for that really was I was working with a client who I was showing how to use one of my key ones I tell people about, using Microsoft Outlook and where people copy emails and if don't read them, delete them, and showed them how they could move them at least out of the way so they can get the wood for the trees. And it's a fairly simple thing to do when you should know how to do it. But I've done that with a number of people over the years, going, why have you got all that garbage in there? Get rid of that garbage. Get rid of that garbage. Deal with it in the right way. And that particular customer, when I did it and set it up for them, when they ran it, it was like 300. They had several thousand emails in their inbox, and several thousand of them disappeared, or several hundred. I can't remember which one it was, but there was a significant proportion. And they were like, "Oh wow, that's got rid of stuff that isn't higher priority. All this other stuff is." And I just thought, well, those sort of things, even if for every person who does that, I know they will save time, they will get home a bit earlier, or they will be able to leverage that for their career and little things like that. So I can see I know those books are out there and people are using it and using those techniques. And that makes me feel good.
And it should.
I can see where that benefit is.
Yeah, it should, because the one thing that I know with all of generativity is sometimes we don't get to see it. That the book is out there and that people are getting it. They're buying it. They're probably leaving a review. You're getting a little bit of feedback, but you may not know what happens with each individual person. And what's interesting is I hadn't thought much about this until I met Bob Lefkowitz, and he was a Nobel Prize winner in 2012 for chemistry. And I write about him in the book, The Mentorship Edge, because he did something interesting, which I encourage everybody to do. He made a legacy tree. So you know how there's an ancestry.com and you can make your own tree of all of your ancestors? Well, he did that with mentors, and he created his own. And so he had the people who were above him, who mentored him, all the people who were mentored by all those people who were sort of lateral to him, and the people he knew he mentored. That was all he could do, was put the people he knew. And then he published it in a journal. And he went to a conference shortly thereafter. And somebody came up to him and he said, "Hey, Bob, I'm 6 degrees Lefkowitz." And he said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, there are 5 people who've worked between you and me." And Bob said, "Well, tell me what you're working on." And he was floored because the person was using his own words, and he had moved, the work that Bob had done had moved so far out, that wheel kept turning and turning, and he got to see where this person was. And he couldn't believe, he said, outside of having his kids, there was nothing more meaningful, because he saw how much impact he had. He never would have known otherwise. And so, abstractly what you're doing with your book or what you're doing with your podcast. Abstractly it's reaching out there. But we all need to start telling people thanks when they mentor us. And we need to, be acknowledging that we've mentored others, because that's how we get that amazing feeling of fulfillment, is when we know that we've made a difference in some way. And, it's like It's a Wonderful Life, the movie, where he, in the end, finds out that he actually mattered to his town. What would have happened if he wasn't there? We don't get that handed to us, but we can create it by saying to somebody, "Hey, follow up with me. Let me know where you are in a year. Hey, let me know what happens. It was great mentoring you." If we start to use that word instead of it being something that we throw away, "Oh yeah, I just interacted with somebody." If we can start to be more meaningful in that, it gives us that endorphin rush that we all like, to know that we made a positive impact on somebody. You talked about how good you feel with your kids when you see them moving and growing. It's no different with anyone that we mentor, whether the person is younger, older, or the same age. It's a peer, it's a lateral mentor, it doesn't matter. We like to know that we're relevant.
Yeah. It's a great example. I was at a conference last year, which I was an attendee at the conference, and someone came up to me, shook my hand, and said, "Oh, I listened to your podcast." I'd never met them before. And that made me feel
Of
good.
course it
And they
did.
enjoy it, and they said, "Thank you," and they thanked me for it. And I'm like, I felt great. And it was, I was, there was a few, and I've had a couple of instances of that where someone who I hadn't in my organisation who listened to it as well, and kind of saying they really enjoy it and they learned loads of it, and every time I get that little bit of feedback or a little comment on LinkedIn when I share a little picture or something of something and someone going, "Oh, that was great," or whatever, just that little, it's that little, like you say, that endorphin rush that, and it's a selfish thing because
No,
it's like
there's no
someone's
selfish
noticing
in
me.
it.
Well, no, there is an element with it. With me, there is though, in that I'm feeling recognised,
That's a good
but
thing.
also I'm recognised and I'm contributing. So there is both. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a little that it is. I am someone who wants that little bit of attention. I do feed off that.
We all want that. You're not
Being
alone.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think I maybe I express it a bit more openly than not. There are a few people who don't, but you know, it's all about me kind of thing. No, it, but it is that double edge on that. There is that recognition of that ego, but there is also that I've made a difference to this
Yeah.
person. They'll listen to it. They're enjoying it. So it is, and it's great to get like with you getting these voices across to people about being. I'm thinking now there will be a PM out there that will be in this era and not realise that they're going through this and understand that actually it's normal. It's a phase that we all go through. It's fine. That's what's really interesting right now for me, is that you get that one help. And I suppose there's that little bit of charitable thing where you see a charity thing on the TV where they're trying to get some money out of you to pay for something, and you don't see the result of that $10, $20, 20 quid, whatever, but you have that little bit inside you going, hopeful in some ways, expectant in others, that you are helping somebody you don't know at the other side of the world, or in a disaster situation. You've made life a little bit easier for them. It takes the guilt away from you a little bit. So there is always that selfish thing.
Yeah.
But I guess as a psychologist, you'll tell me that's what all of those, that internal psyche of self fulfillment, that inner chimp. I like the model of the inner chimp by Steve Peters. That you've got that inner chimp who just wants to feel good about you, and then you've got the rest of the bits that kind of a bit more sensible and thinking about it. I think the mentorship stuff sounds great, and I think again, even in our careers as a PM, I think a lot of what we do, what we should be doing, and when someone comes onto our team as a PM, and I've heard this before and I agree with it, is that person should leave your project better equipped for the organisation and better equipped for their career some way. And whether that is from you spotting something where you can say, by the way, Jim, Jeff, Joan, when you do that, this is what happens. Well, you might want to tweak that. Or when you do that, this happens. That's brilliant. Keep doing it. And even just that one thing from them coming on your project, that reinforcement of a positive thing or that tweak of a direction is mentoring, isn't it? It's that coaching and mentoring. And as a manager, our job is to help those people be the best people they can be and do the best they can for the organisation, completely like for the project, but also for that individual. And that's why I think it's that mentorship comes in as a tool that we don't train in very often as project managers, but we just do. And I think there's probably a little bit of a formalization of that training. So as part of that manager training is that coaching, is that mentorship, because it is different. They are different, aren't they? The mentorship and the coaching are two different things, because that coaching is about well, I'll let you'll explain it better than me, probably, the very difference between coaching and mentoring, because I know what I think it is, and I'm probably wrong.
I don't know. I think, well, you've been spot on with everything, first of all. And you know, we should all be seeking to find out where our mentorship lands, or our coaching or advising or whatever it is that we do. um, because it's normal to want to feel like we've made a difference. So
Yep.
the difference, I'm going to first define mentorship really quickly because I want to, because in the workplace it's often misused, and I don't want to
Yeah.
take away from the really good things that people are doing. It doesn't devalue anything in terms of coaching or advising. You could be doing those things and they're amazing. You should be doing those. Makes us great leaders or great team players.
Yeah.
But mentorship starts with generativity, wanting to help someone without anything in return. So it may be that that it's never acknowledged in any way, shape, or form that you helped. That is when you talked about, I give money on the TV at night. You feel good about it when you do it. You may never know exactly what that dollar did, but you feel good and you do it. It's when we round up at the grocery store and give a little few extra pennies at the end. It is when we, give to a cause that we feel is important, whatever it may be. It's tithing in the church, it's whatever it is. So when we are mentoring, it starts with the generativity. The mentor has to want to give and the mentee has to want to receive. If I say to you, hey, Nigel, I'd like to give you this information, you're like, nah, I don't need it. That's not mentoring. There needs to be both that want it. The second thing is it has to be intrinsically motivated. If you are getting paid to mentor, you are not a mentor. You are a coach or you are an advisor. Both amazing. We need both. It doesn't devalue either of them to call yourself a coach or an advisor. Both of those can lead to mentorship. But in the workplace, we often call a person a mentor. But if you're paid to do it, there's a feeling of exploitation that goes with that, because a person may feel like, if I don't do it, am I going to get promoted? Am I going to get a good project review? So if mentorship is imposed on people in the workplace, it can often have the opposite effect of what we want. So an example of intrinsic motivation is if I said to you, hey, Nigel, would you like to go and volunteer at a soup kitchen, giving food and beverage to hungry, thirsty people? You might say, yeah, I'd like to. It makes me feel good to help people. And then if I said, you know what, Nigel, instead, can you take that time that you were going to give and go volunteer it at Starbucks, giving out food and beverage to hungry, thirsty people, for no money? Most people say, no, I will not do that. It's the same activity, two different locations. Work is Starbucks. And I like to make sure that people understand that there is value in giving out food and beverage at Starbucks, but you want to get paid for it. So don't mix those two up. So then the meaningful connection is important. If you don't like the person that you're mentoring or getting mentorship from, it's not going to be so great. And a lot of places assign a mentor. And people feel too bad, like they're going to be seen as a failure if they say this isn't working out for me. So they trudge along with somebody they don't really like. And that's not good. That's not mentorship. And then we have trust. Imagine if you're in a workplace and you feel like you can't tell your boss or somebody else in your sort of hierarchy that you don't know what you're doing. You're afraid that they're not going to give you a raise or a promotion, or you're going to get a bad review, or they're going to just see you as stupid. Well, that's not trust. Likewise, if you're a person in a workplace and you are feeling like your mentee might take your idea and run with it, that's another thing that can happen in workplaces, where an idea, or if you're in finance, or if you're in certain fields, that they'll feel like, I might get thrown under the bus, or somebody might take my idea. You need trust. And finally, a goal. So it could be one goal. I need your help right now for 1 minute. Or it could be, I want to go and switch a goal over the course of 4 years with you, or a lifetime, and you'll be my mentor and I will be your mentee, or whatever. But you need those things in the workplace. So coaching seems and feels a lot like mentorship, or you're getting paid. Every coach I've talked to says, but I mentor while I coach. And I say, are you getting paid? And they say, yes. And I said, then you're a coach. You're being a good coach. You're doing what coaches are supposed to do. And advisors, the same. If you're in a university, you're an advisor. You're not a mentor. You're getting paid to meet with the student and help them along on their journey. That can turn into mentorship later. And I talk about how those transitions can happen into mentorship. And if you're networking, that can lead to mentoring, but that's not mentoring. So any of those things that are out there, are distinctly different from mentorship, and often just by one little ingredient that's in there, maybe two. But it's just like if I were to bake brownies and I left out sugar, it would look like brownies, but it wouldn't taste like it. So that's how I like to think of mentorship, as distinct from the others.
It's really useful explanation and concept of that, because I know we have mentorship programs within organizations, and some of them are formal, and so it's a case of it's really good if you mentor, and that you do get a benefit from it with these organizations, where the organization, when you're mentoring, they'll recognize it, but it's not necessarily a condition of what you're doing. So it is one of those sort of, but there is a structure around the organization. So there is a bit of a, as you say, it's a bit of a grey. It's not quite a coach, because you're not there to say, right, coach this person in this specific thing, but you are there to help them. But as you say, that concept of that
would be an advisor
thing, the trust bit that you mentioned there is really interesting, because there isn't, even with me, if I'm coaching people, there's not coaching people, as I see it, mentoring, coaching, whatever they want them. If they're saying to me about the organization, from their point of view, I'm still a representative of the organization. I'm a representative management of the organization, and therefore there isn't a complete, whilst I may be completely treating our conversations as carte blanche and don't say anything to anyone, there is always a risk to the individual, the mentee, sitting there going, well, Nigel might say something, because they don't know that I won't. Whereas if I'm sat in a completely separate and completely outside of the organisation, well, I don't have. In theory, there's some I could do, but I haven't got a vested interest that may conflict with the individual's position, because I'm there to support them, not to be I haven't got two masters, if you like. If you like, the mentee is your master, because if you are a mentor and you want to support that mentee, it's all about helping them be the best them. And it might be leave the organisation that you're in, might be the best thing to tell them, because it's not helping them do without them, not making them well. But then if I've got my corporate hat on, I might be sitting there thinking, well, we don't want to lose that person, because they're really good. Exactly, they're not happy. They may not be happy. Yeah, and I'll be influenced by that. Yeah, and I've never thought of it that way. And I can kind of see where there can be a distinction.
That's where I would say it's an advisor.
Be a blur on those words. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think honestly, if you're in a university, they distinctly call the person that's working with you, and it feels like it should be a mentor. They are shaping you and helping you, literally, in the courses that you take and what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that is often what is in a workplace, but they call it a mentor. And that is where I see that does that make an advisor something less? It's that they want an altruistic thing attached to it. And, so they want to call it mentor. But I look at that as exploitation in some way, because, really you should be called what you are, is someone who's doing something that has an extrinsic motivator attached to it. Is that bad?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. You're being a fabulous person who's advising somebody. Does everybody want an advisor? Yes, they do. Who doesn't want somebody helping you? Now, of course, if you're tied to the work and you're saying, you know what, I don't want to lose this person, like you mentioned, that would be what an advisor would do versus a mentor who doesn't have that stake in the game. Yeah. And can you have a mentor at work? Absolutely. The form that I look at as most useful in companies is lateral mentoring. So if you said to somebody who you had nothing to do with their work trajectory, maybe it's somebody in a different department, maybe it's someone somewhere else, completely, or somebody totally lateral to you, you can have that trust. You can have all of those components. It's when it's hierarchical that it has the issues.
Yeah. I think that for me, when I've had what I've described as a mentor, he's just retired now actually, but was mentoring me, one of the VPs, but they weren't part of my direct chain up to the top. They were in another department. I'd worked for them before, and I got on with them, and I felt I trusted them because I felt that I could tell them. And maybe there's a little bit in there of actually I would still consider them as being part of the corporate organisation, so maybe there wouldn't be warts and all would come out. But from an organisational point of view, and if I had a problem with where I was working, what I was doing with the client, with whatever, I felt very comfortable saying,
And that sounds
I've
like
got this
mentorship.
problem. How do I? Yeah, and it was really valuable because it did. I had a number of things that I found valuable there. One, he quite often said, "Nah, I've been through that. I've had that situation. You're not being. It's not you." Kind of thing. It is just how life is sometimes, and sometimes it is. No, you need to change a little bit. If you did that, think about it differently. And I found those things really helpful. And I try to advise. I've got reviewees who work for me, and it's kind of like you need to find someone to mentor you, and you need to look at someone who and I've mentored some people. And I've got to a point where we've said actually we're now at a point where I'm no longer valuable to mentor you, and that is maybe in the coaching thing as well. It's a blend there. It's like the Andy Murray, tennis player in the UK, changes coaches at a certain point through his career, but not because the other coach was not good. It's because there are different skills that those coaches, those mentors have, because you've now moved. They've coached you to a level. They've mentored you to a level.
Yeah.
And to take you to that next level, they haven't got those skills, those experience, that knowledge to be able to help you that way. And it's always a case of, it's not one and done. It's a case of re-looking at it, is what I've always thought.
I think everybody needs to have coaches, advisors, and mentors and sponsors. We need them all. Mm-hmm. And I would say, here you are remembering, and who you described before at work sounds like he was an actual mentor. It'd be kind of cool if you were able to contact him and say, "Hey, here's where I am right now."
I'm still in contact with him. It's not
great.
that long ago since he retired. Yeah, it's not that long ago. Yeah.
But I have been able to make some of those distinctions because it feels like a lot of gray area, and where in hierarchical situations, mentorship does exist. It's not like it can't in the workplace. But some of those examples to give it the real feeling of what it is with real life examples from people, because it's when we live in the gray area and we can't fully define something that we can't acknowledge it fully. Now, if you were to sit down today and write down all the people that mentored you, or think about them even, or all the people that you mentored, and you were really to decipher who those people are, it's going to make you feel really good. And we often don't do that because we think of them as either coaches or advisors or something else that doesn't feel as personal to us. And I think that if we can switch that out, it's just a tweak. It'll make us feel really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really good. It's interesting, that legacy tree, and I took a note as you'd said that about that. It's kind of, I'm doing the thing at the moment. I'm coming up on a 20th anniversary working in the organisation I've worked in. I'm very lucky because I've had a chance to move around a lot of different parts of it and have almost different jobs at different times and work with lots of different technologies. And I was looking back and I found something from 20 years ago in an old admin folder somewhere that I was looking at, and it kind of brought me back a lot of. I'd gone back that far, and it brought back through a whole load of memories. And I'm thinking about all the different people I've worked for and the people I've worked with, and the things I've learned from each, or things I've passed on to each, and that makes kind of timing of this, and it's that usual thing where you cross over a new year. I'm thinking it'd be really useful for my own thing to just do that bubble of things. And I'm thinking of people from before then. And my first, the first guy who gave me my first interview and gave me a first job, Brian, who, after he left the organisation I was in, and for many years afterwards, we kept in touch, and I'd go and see him and have a chat. And he was kind of like a career mentor. And I've never thought of it quite like that before. And I think sometimes those mentors, you don't realise who they are. Sometimes, And
Yeah,
it's kind of that looking back and seeing, and sometimes you're a mentor and you don't realize you're a mentor as well, maybe
exactly.
because people just chat and have a question. They can be a friend or it can be a colleague or whatever, and it's just sometimes it's really helpful to be that sounding board for people.
I
So
love that you're
I
going to
really,
do that. That is so cool. You know what would be
yeah, I
cool?
think
Is if you make
yeah.
it and you let people who you don't realize add themselves onto it.
Yeah, exactly what I was thinking. But the
Oh,
way
I
you were saying
love
that
it.
is kind of right. Yeah, if people come there and go, oh, by the way, you mentored me in this, thank you. That
Yeah.
again, that
Oh
ego
my
thing. But
God.
it would be really
Epic.
interesting. Yeah, yeah, it would become this myriad of, let's say, 6 steps removed. And oh
Yeah.
yeah, you told that person, who told that person, that person. They keep telling me about that, about whether there's someone who does that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. I think looking at that and again, it does relate into that age, that where we are now and where that generative stuff that you talk about is the fact that recognizing where we have contributed and looking back and looking at those individuals and seeing where they are, and things like LinkedIn, fabulous for that sort of thing,
Yeah.
because you see that where it pops up, your thing that they've just been promoted, and you go, "Blooming heck, I haven't seen them for ages." Oh wow, they're doing that now,
Yeah.
and you think that's brilliant, and it's a great to see, and I think helping each other get better and do things, and I think that's the thing, as us as PMs, we go through we tend to not be sat in a department with the same people for, if you're doing 20 years, there's a lot of people I still know at the same organization I've got. But over those 20 years, I've met with different people. I've had different team
Yeah.
members coming in and going out, coming in and going out. And therefore, my influence over them that we have, positive and negative as PMs, is massive compared to maybe a manager who's I say just in an operational department with the same team. They can create an amazing influence on those people, but we get an opportunity where we can make a massive difference to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I think it's something we should all consider, and then consider that generative thing around that side of it. I'm just looking at the clock now, and we're coming up on, although we had a little hiatus where we had the technical, but we're coming up on the hour now. And I think I could talk about this for quite a long time. I do quite interested in the psychology of us as humans. But we'll have to stop at some point. What I was going to say to you was there anything that when we sort of arranged to have this call that you thought, oh, I'd like to talk about that. I'd like to mention this or that or whatever. There's a chance to kind of get back on track away from the rabbit holes that I dug.
I love the rabbit holes. I want everybody to really know that all you have to do is look to your left and look to your right, and you're looking at somebody that you can be generative with as a mentor or a mentee. So there's no one who isn't a mentor, and there's no one who isn't a mentee. And the only other thing I would love to, which is what you just brought up, is I would love to see everybody on LinkedIn thanking their mentors and thanking
That'd be great.
really just taking the month to do that, because I think that it'll make you feel really amazing when you find out all the people that you didn't even think of.
Yeah, that would be quite interesting, wouldn't it? It kind of, yeah, and it's a little bit dangerous because you think, oh, I forgot that person, then you start feeling guilty. But yeah, it does start some of
Just
those things that start thinking.
pick 3 people a day to thank.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Then you
Yeah,
don't leave people
good
out.
idea. Yeah. That people then people won't feel left out because they know it's potentially they're coming down the line a little bit later. But yeah, that's a fantastic idea. I think about it. See if we can get that started. Maybe
I'm
get
also,
it as a positive meme.
exactly. I'm also hoping people can check out the Mentorship Edge, because I really do define a lot of this from the point of view of our human development and how we're built to want to give back and built to mentor, and how we can do it laterally and hierarchically in the workplace and in our personal lives. So, and at any age, you don't have to be in midlife or older to do it.
Well, no, there is a lot of, and it's referred to as reverse mentoring within organisations, which I think is a really positive idea, because it does. I think there are situations, the greyer your hair gets, the less, and generationally we change And there are things that are and I know that there are reverse mentoring from a diversity point of view as well, which I think is really good, because understanding other people's points of view from different diversity, from different ages, from different generations, I think is hard for us to know. Middle-aged white guy, you know what I mean? Middle-aged white guy growing up in the UK, it's difficult for me. I've had a privileged life, a privileged start. I've had a step up on a lot of things that I can't know about without being mentored on. And those sort of things, I think, are a fantastic approach. And they may not be pure mentoring, but I think from the soul of that giving back, I think it's really good. And it's good technique for those people to, as they get more experienced and they're able to coach people there, it's practice for doing it, if nothing else. So I think it's a really good way of doing it. That is brilliant. If people want to find out more, continue the conversation with you, what is the best way for them to get hold of you?
You can reach me at deborahheiser.com. On LinkedIn, you can find me. I write for Psychology Today. You can find me at mentorproject.org. You can reach me through the contact button there. I'm all over the place. So if you look me up, you'll find my email also.
Brilliant. Superb. Well, Deborah, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been a fascinating, it's given me food for thought, as every conversation I have with my mentors on my podcasts, that I seem to be able to get people to come on the show and mentor me for an hour at least. It's really useful. And basically have a fantastic rest of your day. So thanks for coming on the show.
You too. Thanks for having me. It's been a delight.
Brilliant. Cheers. So I have a number of sponsors, affiliate links in the way that it's set up, that have kindly allowed me to share their services, really. The first one is Mike Clayton, and Mike runs online PM courses, and it is a great resource for getting those fundamentals of project management trained, reasonably priced, and Mike presents it in an accessible and clear manner. You can check out some of his videos on his YouTube channel and kind of give you a view of where they are. But the code for that, if you go to nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, all one word, lowercase, that'll redirect you to it. There's very different levels that you can buy. You can buy individual courses, you can buy pathways as well, if you like. And I get a kickback off those. Mike kindly shares me that. So if you do jump on and use it, I hope you find it really useful. I think he has money back guarantees and things like that as well. So there's very limited risk on that. So jump on that, and that again, it's nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, and enjoy. Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.